Niccolo Machiavelli wrote that a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. He did not write this to encourage cruelty, but to document reality. Imagine a modern office at 6 p.m. The fluorescent lights hum with a low clinical vibration. Most of the staff has left, their footsteps fading into the elevator bank. Yet one figure remains at their desk, illuminated by the pale glow of a monitor. They are finishing a report that is not theirs, covering for a colleague who left early with a vague excuse about a family emergency that everyone knows is a fabrication. The person staying late believes they are banking goodwill. They believe that their sacrifice is being recorded in a silent ledger of justice, and that eventually they will be rewarded with loyalty and respect. But if you observe closely, if you look past the tired posture and the cold coffee, you will see that they are not building an empire of gratitude. They are building a prison of expectation. The colleague who left early does not feel grateful. They feel relieved that they found a utility to exploit. The manager does not feel impressed. They feel secure that they have a beast of burden that requires no maintenance. We live in a society that sells kindness as the ultimate currency, teaching us from childhood that if we are accommodating enough, soft enough, and generous enough, the world will treat us with symmetry. Machiavelli shattered this illusion 500 years ago. He understood that in the architecture of power, excessive kindness is not seen as a virtue to be honored, but as a gap in the armor to be pierced. Today, we strip away the moral sentimentality surrounding niceness to observe the mechanics of human nature through the Machiavellian lens. We examine why being too kind is often a strategic error that leads not to sainthood, but to irrelevance. Observation 1. The decay of gratitude into entitlement. Human nature operates on a principle of adaptation. When a favor is granted once, it is received as a gift. When it is granted twice, it is received as a pleasant surprise. By the third time, it has become an expectation. By the 10th, it is a right. Observe the dynamic between the perpetual giver and the perpetual taker. In the beginning, there is a visible exchange of emotion, warm smiles, enthusiastic thank yous, firm handshakes. But watch the timeline. As the kindness becomes consistent, the reaction flatlines. The thank you becomes a mumbled formality or disappears entirely. The psychological principle here is hedonic adaptation applied to social value. If you provide a resource, be it your time, your money, or your emotional labor, without scarcity, the market value of that resource drops to zero. Machiavelli warned that it is safer to be feared than to be loved, because love is preserved by the link of obligation, which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear preserves you by a dread of punishment that never fails. The overly kind person relies on the link of obligation, unaware that for most people, obligation is a burden they will shrug off the moment it becomes inconvenient. Observation 2. Kindness interpreted as fear. In the primal brain, which still governs much of our modern autopilot behavior, passivity is rarely read as nobility. It is read as submission. When a conflict arises, a disagreement in a meeting, a boundary crossed in a friendship, the overly kind person instinctively seeks to de-escalate. They smile nervously, they soften their tone, they use qualifying language like "I feel" or "maybe we could." Watch the eyes of the aggressor in this moment. They do not soften in return. You will often see a micro-expression of contempt, a slight tightening of the lip, a narrowing of the gaze. They have detected that the kindness is not a choice, but a defense mechanism. They perceive that you are being kind not because you are good, but because you are afraid of the friction that comes with standing firm. Once this diagnosis is made, the power dynamic shifts permanently. You are no longer a peer, you are prey. Machiavelli understood that unarmed prophets always fail. To enter the arena of social friction without the capacity for aggression is not high moral ground, it is strategic suicide. Observation 3. The vacuum of respect. We are culturally conditioned to believe that respect is earned through service. We think, if I do everything for everyone, they will see my value. The reality, however, is often the inverse. Respect is a reaction to power and boundaries. It is the recognition that an individual possesses a territory, intellectual, emotional, or physical, that cannot be violated without consequence. The overly kind individual creates no territory. They have no walls. They are a public square where anyone can walk through, leave their trash, and exit without paying a toll. Observe the physical space in a conversation. The overly kind person tends to shrink, folding their limbs, nodding excessively, leaning in to show attentiveness. The dominant personality expands, taking up space, interrupting, looking away. By making yourself infinitely accessible and malleable, you remove the friction required to generate respect. You become part of the furniture, useful, reliable, and completely invisible until you break. Machiavelli noted that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. In this context, the deception is self-inflicted. You deceive yourself into thinking your submission is a strategy for connection. Observation 4. The magnetism of the parasite. In nature, a host with a compromised immune system attracts parasites. In human dynamics, a personality with compromised boundaries attracts narcissists and Machiavellians of the darker sort. If you have a reputation for being too nice, you are essentially broadcasting a signal that your resources are unguarded. You attract friends who only call when they are in crisis. You attract partners who require you to manage their emotional regulation. You attract bosses who dump the most tedious work on your desk because they know you won't complain. Watch the pattern of your phone notifications. Who are the people who reach out to you? Are they offering value or are they extracting it? The overly kind person often finds themselves surrounded by a court of emotional vampires. This is not bad luck. This is structural. You have created an environment where the cost of entry is zero, so the quality of the occupant is low. Machiavelli advised the prince to carefully select his advisors and to shun flatterers. The modern equivalent is to curate your access. If you are open to everyone, you are safe with no one. Observation 5. The paralysis of decision-making. Machiavelli valued virtù, boldness, decisiveness, and the ability to act effectively. The flaw of excessive kindness is that it often leads to analysis paralysis. When your primary operating system is do no harm or please everyone, you become incapable of making the hard decisions that leadership and self-mastery require. Observe a group trying to decide on a direction. The kind person tries to find a consensus that doesn't exist. They dilute the plan to avoid offending the outliers. The result is mediocrity. In your own life, how often have you delayed a necessary breakup, a resignation, or a difficult conversation because you didn't want to be mean? This hesitation is not kindness, it is a lack of courage. While you hesitate, the rot spreads. Machiavelli argued that a ruler who is afraid to be harsh when necessary allows disorder to grow, which eventually harms more people than a swift, decisive execution would have. By trying to save everyone's feelings in the short term, you destroy the structure in the long term.
Observation 6. The loss of the mystery. Power relies heavily on the unknown. We fear and respect what we cannot fully predict. The overly kind person is entirely predictable. Their algorithm is simple. Input request, output compliance. Input aggression, output retreat. Because they are an open book, there is no narrative tension in their presence. They are safe, and safe is quickly categorized as boring or irrelevant by the human subconscious. Machiavelli advised the prince to be variable, to be capable of being both the lion and the fox. To be the lion is to show force. To be the fox is to show cunning. The overly kind person is neither. They are the sheep. And as Machiavelli dryly notes, it is the nature of the wolf to eat the sheep. When you are totally transparent and consistently accommodating, you remove the psychological edge that keeps others on their toes. You offer no surprise. Without the capacity to surprise, you cannot hold attention, and you certainly cannot hold authority. Observation 7. The accumulation of hidden resentment. This is the internal cost. No human being is a bottomless well of generosity. We are transactional creatures, even if the currency is emotional. The person who gives without limit is not transcending human nature, they are suppressing it. Observe the face of the nice person when they think no one is watching. The mask slips. You see the fatigue around the eyes. You see the tightening of the jaw. This is the shadow. Every time they say yes when they wanted to say no, a small deposit of resentment is made in their psyche. Over years, this account accumulates interest. It eventually manifests as passive aggression, sudden emotional outbursts, or psychosomatic illness. Machiavelli warned against being hated by the populace, but the kind person often ends up hating themselves. They despise their own inability to defend their territory. This internal rot is far more dangerous than external conflict. It turns the individual into a martyr who secretly loathes the people they serve. A strategic operator understands that a clean no is healthier than a resentful yes. Observation 8. The weaponization of guilt. Paradoxically, the overly kind person often uses their kindness as a weapon of guilt, which repels people. They unconsciously transmit the message, "Look how much I suffer for you. You owe me." This is a heavy, suffocating energy. People can feel the strings attached to the benevolence. They sense that the kindness is a contract they didn't sign. Observe the dynamic in families or close friendships where one person plays the martyr. The others do not feel love, they feel trapped. They feel the weight of an unpaid debt. Machiavelli understood that people naturally resent those to whom they are heavily indebted because the debt emphasizes their inferiority. By doing too much for others, you are not elevating them, you are reminding them of their dependence on you. This breeds secret hostility. The most strategic move is often to allow others the dignity of struggle, rather than smothering them with assistance they cannot repay. Observation 9. The confusion of kindness with weakness. It is critical to distinguish between being good and being nice. Goodness is a moral stance that requires strength. Niceness is often a social reflex that requires nothing but compliance. Machiavelli did not advocate for evil, he advocated for effectiveness. He argued that a man must learn how not to be good and to use this knowledge and not to use it according to the necessity of the case. This is the core of the strategic weakness, the inability to switch modes. The overly kind person has only one gear. When the situation demands a hammer, they offer a pillow. Observe the leaders or individuals you truly respect. They are not nice in the conventional soft sense. They are fair, they are consistent, they are capable of great warmth, but you also know instinctively that they are capable of coldness if the line is crossed. It is this capacity for coldness that gives their warmth its value.
If the sun shone 24 hours a day, we would curse it. We value the light because we know the dark. Observation 11. The inevitability of betrayal. Machiavelli's most cynical yet accurate observation is that men are quick to change their nature when their interests are at stake. The overly kind person operates on the assumption that their loyalty will be mirrored. They are shocked, genuinely devastated when the person they helped for years stabs them in the back for a promotion, or when a partner leaves them for someone less accommodating. This shock comes from a failure to read human nature. They projected their own idealism onto a world that runs on self-interest. By being overly kind, you often shield people from the consequences of their actions. You clean up their messes. You hide their incompetence. When you finally stop, or when you need them to stand up for you, they will view your withdrawal of support as an attack. You haven't trained them to be loyal. You've trained them to be entitled. And an entitled person will betray you the moment you stop feeding the entitlement. We must now address the human autopilot. Most of us engage in these behaviors not because we have consciously chosen a philosophy of extreme altruism, but because we are running a script written in our childhood. We learned to be safe, we had to be small. We learned to be loved, we had to be useful. We walk into a room and our autopilot scans for potential conflict, immediately calculating what we need to surrender to keep the peace. We smile when we're angry. We apologize when we're bumped into. We offer help before a request is even made. This is not virtue. This is a reflex. It is a biological imperative to avoid rejection of the tribe. But you are no longer in the tribe where exile means death. You are in a modern hierarchy where autonomy means power. To break the autopilot, you must become the silent observer of your own impulses. You must catch the apology before it leaves your lips. You must feel the urge to fill the silence with an offer of help, and you must let that urge die in your throat. It is time to redefine the architecture of your character. To implement the wisdom of Machiavelli is not to become a villain, it is to become sovereign. It is to understand that your kindness is a limited resource, like gold, and it should be distributed with the same scarcity and discernment. Imagine a version of yourself that is capable of saying no without a follow-up explanation. Imagine a version of yourself that can sit in the tension of someone else's disappointment without rushing to fix it. This version of you is not cruel. This version of you is solid. The strategic individual understands that true kindness requires the capacity to cruelty. You cannot protect the sheep if you are afraid to hurt the wolf. If you are harmless, you are not virtuous, you are merely helpless. Machiavelli invites you to grow teeth, not to bite the innocent, but to smile with the quiet confidence of someone who knows they cannot be eaten. As you move through your week, observe the moments where you trade your power for a smile. Observe the transactions where you overpay. Stop hoping that the world will reward your weakness with mercy. It will not. Build your walls, guard your gates, and let your kindness be a gift you bestow from a position of strength, not a toll you pay from a position of fear. Welcome to the reality of the game.